All right, guys, welcome back to my TEW 2020 game with AEW. And before we jump into the AEW Dynamite results for Week 2, March 2021, we're going to look at some other things. And as you can tell, we're going to start with my competition, which is WWE holding Elimination Chamber. And they get the always welcome Really Struck Gold with this show note. And Becky Lynch is the star of the show. Seems like quite a show for WWE, and we're going to jump into the results here and see what it looked like before we jump into some of our stuff with AEW. So they get a 78 rating. That's pretty good. You'll take that. And first thing that jumps out is that it seems like a pretty pre-show heavy event here, as they had 6 matches on the pre-show. I guess not unusual with WWE. I think people complain sometimes about the long pre-show that they have. Well, this was quite a pre-show, and looks like they had a pretty good match here, 72, with Murphy and Ricochet. We jump into the main card, see what stands out, what they're up to. We get another nice green one here. That's an interview with Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns. That would have been an interesting one, I'm sure. You get an angle with Brock Lesnar. That's always going to get you a nice little rating. If we scroll down here, how many segments do they have? But I guess it's WWE, and considering it's probably a 3.5 hour show, lots of segments in this one. And we look at some of the other highlights. Here's another nice bright green with Cesaro, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Sami Zayn defeating Rey Mysterio and the Viking Raiders. That got a 75. Andrade and Bobby Lashley got a 70. An 84 here. There. Look at this. What is this? The Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns defeated the Usos. Now that is a match there, considering Roman Reigns' relationship with the Usos and the fact that he's teaming with Bray Wyatt. So that's at least intriguing. I'll give WWE props for that. That is a nice one. And we come on down here, and this is where they really started to pick it up. You had Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair in an 85 match for the WWE Raw Women's title. That certainly delivered. And look at this one here. You had Braun Strowman defeating The Undertaker in a cage match, an 81. That's actually pretty good, probably, when you consider it. But they had several cage matches on this show, and I assume that is because of the Elimination Chamber tagline and the main event. Drew McIntyre retains his title against Randy Orton in a 93. You're not going to be disappointed with that. So a 78 for WWE at Elimination Chamber, and they're going to have more shows than we do, of course, so with AEW, but this is a nice start for them here in this game. We go from WWE to AEW, and as promised, the AEW Dynamite results for Week 2 of March 2021. And we start things off with a pre-show match between Jurassic Express, which this version is Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt, taking on Alex Reynolds and John Silver. A nice 53 rating here. I'll take that for a pre-show match between these two teams. And going to be two teams that have different roles, probably in this game in particular, with Jurassic Express in line for a nice little push. And they're going to have themselves quite a storyline coming up here pretty soon. So there's a nice teaser for that. More pre-show action with Shawn Spears taking on QT Marshall. This is actually, I think, a rematch from AEW Dark. We'll get to the results of those after this show. But these two square off again, and we get a 50 for this one. Shawn Spears gets the win with the perfect 10 here, as it's called in this one. And it looks like QT Marshall was off his game, which, that's not great. We don't like that, but that's okay. This is a pre-show match, and these two also probably going to have different roles in terms of where they're at in my game here. And it looks like Brandy Rhodes being at ringside with QT Marshall helped out a little bit and gave the rating enough of a boost to get to a 50. So not too much to take away from this one, just a pre-show match trying to get these two some action here. And then we go to the final pre-show match of the evening, and that is Sheeta taking on Bea Priestley, and Sheeta gets another win. I think she was on the pre-show in our previous episode of Dynamite last week. She got a win there, and picking up another win here in 7:08 with the submission. And looks like she's going to continue, as you can probably tell, to be a big part of what we do here in this game because really like her, and I think it's someone that we're going to try to give a nice push to and see if she can eventually challenge for the AEW Women's title in this particular game. So that is the pre-show. And we move to the main card and start things off with a really good match here. 62, I'll take this for Santana and Ortiz taking on Private Party. This one goes 9:39. Santana gets the win with the pin on Isaiah Cassidy. And it looks like both teams getting that bonus for the tag team specialists, so that's good. And we did for this one, I think we added in the work the crowd note for this particular match. So we're starting the episode off proper with a work the crowd note and really just trying to get the crowd going. And that's why I think we get the match got the show off to a strong start. So putting those guys in the opening match, and once again, I've said it before, I said it on the first episode of this series, the tag team scene in AEW is just so fun to watch, and it's really fun to book because there's so many possibilities. And as you'll see in our main event, another tag team match that we're hoping to get a really nice rating out of as well, with two other teams that are just rolling right along here in AEW. So 62 for Santana and Ortiz. They keep the momentum going for Inner Circle with the win against Private Party. So we'll take that. Nice start to the show. And we follow that up with just a freestyle segment, as you can see here on Nyla Rose. Basically, it just recaps her dominance in AEW. Think of it as a nice little package on what she's accomplished thus far. She is the AEW Women's Champion here in this game, and we're just kind of hyping her up, getting her ready for her next challenger, and she is going to be in action next week on Dynamite. So once again, just kind of pushing her as the face of the AEW women's division right now, and she is the champ, and everyone coming after her. So a nice little dominant point here for Nyla Rose, and 32 rating. We weren't expecting anything to be a 70 or a 90 or anything like that, but wanted to get her on the show. So Nyla Rose is there, hyping her up for her next one. And speaking of the women's division, we are going to have a match here, Britt Baker and Yuka Sakazaki. We hyped this up last week with Britt Baker hyping the match in a promo, and now she gets the victory in 7-12 via submission, and looks like the announcing quality helped this match. But the women's division, it's going to take a little work in the game because you just have to be able to get these workers over a bit more, and I think that's something that it's not easy to do, but we're going to try to see how many of these workers we can get over. We mentioned Sheeta earlier. Of course, Nyla Rose, she's the champ, but we're going to work on all these others and see how many of these women we can get over and make it more into eventually hoping to be something like the tag division. I know that's going to maybe take a little while, but just a lot of the women on the AEW roster don't have a ton of popularity in the regions that we're going to be having shows in. So it's a matter of getting them over more. And as you can tell with Britt Baker, she's been a main focus for the first couple weeks of shows we've done here, and she'll continue to be that, as has Sheeta and Nyla Rose, and the list will go on and on as we start to introduce more of the women into the fold here in AEW on these shows specifically. So Britt Baker picking up a win there over Yuka Sakazaki, and a nice 48 rating there for that match. And we follow that up with another freestyle segment here, and this is somewhat similar to the one we did with Nyla Rose. This one called Luchasaurus in Action Next Week, hyping a match for Luchasaurus that he is going to have on next week's Dynamite. And looks like, hey, my man Luchasaurus did very well improvising throughout the segment, and it gets a 41. Again, another one that we put on the card knowing that it's not going to be a segment that is an 80, a 90, or anything like that, but just need to get Luchasaurus on the card to hype up his match next week, and he is going to have a very important role in a big storyline that we are building here in AEW, but he will be in action next week on the card here, as this was hype for him and just kind of showcasing his talents ahead of his scheduled match for next week. And next up is Matt Hardy getting a win against Evil Luno In 8:01, Matt Hardy uses the Twist of Fate for the pin and the victory. This is one we teased on last week's show, Matt Hardy interview, hyping himself up, and he gets a win and an advantage over the Dark Order here, and we'll see if Matt has any more interactions with the Dark Order coming up. But for now, gets some momentum with the victory in his first match here, at least in this game, and with a 55 rating for Matt in this one. Evil Uno with 43, a 53 rating overall. Not bad, considering that we weren't expecting this to be a classic or anything like that. So, and next up, Darby Allin. He's hyping up his match that he's going to have next week with Jimmy Havoc, and as you can see, it gets a 54, but him being the flavor of the month helps this segment, and that's good for us because it knocked the rating up a bit. And I like how, you have the flavor of the month, that kind of stuff added now into the Road Agent Report, and other things like that, talking about having a hot catchphrase and new moves and all those types of things. That makes it more interesting, and it gives the guys a bump, whenever they are. If they're hot, they should, get a nice little boost from it, and clearly that's what Darby Allin gets here as he hypes up his match next week against Jimmy Havoc on Dynamite. And our next match, Hangman Page against Kip Sabian, and this is a nice 69 rating here, and while it says it didn't have much heat, we'll take it because it goes 10-23 pinfall. Hangman gets the win, and again, we just talked about it with Darby Allin, but Hangman Page gets the benefit of being the flavor of the month, and he also had a really nice rating here, 79. Kip Sabian's not as high, of course, but we're working on building Kip up into someone that could be a future star. And right now, just paying his dues as he loses to one half of the tag team champs. And as we can see, this match got the crowd buzzing. That's good because they seem to be feeding in very well to what we have here, and we're building the show up as we go along. We mentioned earlier we started the show with that hot tag match between Santana and Ortiz against Private Party, but now we're building them up here with more interesting bouts, and this was good to get the crowd buzzing because we have some exciting stuff coming up after this, so we'll see if those segments can carry off of this momentum from a really good match here between Hangman Page and Kip Sabian. And we go to Sammy Guevara cutting a promo here, just hyping himself up as the Spanish God that he is. 54 rating, no specific comments, so really just something we wanted to get Sammy on the show, and he'll be in action soon here as well, as he is going to kind of play a big part in another feud that we have that we're working on with one of his Inner Circle members. So. And the next one we have is Kenny Omega. He is hyping the match next week that he's going to have with Pentagon Jr. That is going to be the big match on our show next week on Dynamite. Gets a 70, and as you can tell, Kenny struggled a bit going off script. He's someone that, I think you go back and forth sometimes, but probably need to remember to script him. I think I actually did in the first episode, but didn't remember to do that in this one. So when Kenny talks, we're going to have to script him apparently because he's struggling going off script, and that advanced the storyline that we have going on with the Tag Champs and the Lucha Brothers, and remember, that is signed already for Double or Nothing. So we are going to be building towards that for a couple months now until that show. So we've got to, get creative and find some different ways to put those two teams together in different spots so we can really build up that match that they're going to have at Double or Nothing. Next up, we have MJF going up against Colt Cabana. MJF gets the win in 8:26, and here we go, getting the crowd hotter. That's what we want. 64 rating here. I don't really know exactly what I expected from this match. MJF has a bigger role to play in terms of what his upcoming storyline is going to be, but two entertainers. I think they're both labeled as entertainers in this game. I could be wrong, but I think they both have that specification in terms of what type of wrestler they are. So two entertainers entertainers, 64 rating here. I'm sure there was some good comedy between those two in this match, but MJF gets the win, and we get the crowd hotter here for what's next, which is MJF in a freestyle segment with Lance Archer. And as you can see here, Lance Archer off screen for this one. We made this a freestyle segment because it's basically MJF talking about how he doesn't owe anyone any explanation on why he met with Jake Roberts a week ago on Dynamite about a partnership with Lance Archer, and basically MJF just running everyone down and saying that while everyone wants to know the reason, he is not ready to unveil why that is just yet. So 57 rating here. I probably should have made this a different type of angle. Going back, looking at it, I should have just probably put Lance Archer in there with him and maybe thrown Jake in there too. It's sort of a different type of segment and maybe angled it a different way, but that's okay. MJF with 57, and if we just had just a normal promo segment with him and Archer and Jake in the same one, it probably would have got a higher rating actually. So this is just one of those when you're booking so many segments, sometimes you just forget to go through and double check some of them. So that's one we'll work on for next time. And our next match, which we hyped it last week, Chris Jericho did a promo, with his match he's going to have for this week, and that was against Chuck Taylor, and they delivered here in terms of what we were looking for, a 76 in this match, and the reason why, and we teased it earlier, Sammy Guevara interferes in this match and helps Jericho get the win against Chuck Taylor. This one goes 12-20, the Judas Effect for the win, but as we can see, Sammy Guevara helping out the Inner Circle leader here and trying to make his presence felt, and what is hopefully going to become a pretty fun feud here we have going on with these particular wrestlers involved, and we'll see it play out more over the next several weeks as we get ready to move towards, Double or Nothing. But this is a good one. 76, we will definitely be excited about that because Jericho and Chuck Taylor, fun little pairing there. And Sammy Guevara, we'll see what the ramifications are for him getting involved in this match. And that leads us to the next part, which is Jericho. After the match, he gets an 84 here in this one, and basically, you can see here that it's Jericho cutting a promo hyping his upcoming match with Orange Cassidy. That's going to be several weeks away, but he basically just calls Orange Cassidy a stupid idiot and that he prefers apple juice over orange juice. So that's Chris Jericho's stance on things, and it will not be next week for this match, but we're going to plan on having Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy in the ring together here in several weeks, and we'll see how it plays out leading up to that match between those two. And as we can see, I mean, green everywhere, and that's not to be, unexpected when it comes to Jericho delivering a promo. Fantastic, a masterful job of improvising, and he has the hot catchphrase, so that helps. So we get an 84 out of Jericho, basically just running down Orange Cassidy and trying to see if this is something that he wants to basically just beat down Orange Cassidy whenever they do get in the ring together. So Jericho hates Orange Cassidy, but what's new, right? So there is that. And that takes us to Pac, which if you watch the previous episode, Pac made a statement as he was in the final angle of the show as he attacked Cody after Cody's main event match against Shawn Spears. And Pac made it pretty clear as he held up the title over Cody after the attack that that's what he wanted. He wants the TNT title, and that's what this promo was here as he is building up the match between Cody and him, and we'll see if Cody accepts that challenge. Not official yet for Double or Nothing, but we'll see if Cody accepts the challenge against Pac for the TNT title. And we go to our main event match here, and look at this. This really delivered. I went back and forth on this because I was going to put Jericho and Chuck Taylor as the main event match, but ultimately decided to go with the Young Bucks and Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian. And it goes 11:32, and we get the Young Bucks getting the win with Matt Jackson using the Meltzer driver on Kazarian, and lots of green here, and no surprise considering that who we have involved with just two, experienced teams, and you put those two in there together, and they're going to give you a really nice rating. And we can see that the Young Bucks had the much higher ratings, but I think that's probably most likely because Kazarian and Daniels are older, and probably I think you get some of the physical effects of what's going on with them. And let's just check it out here with the dirt sheet. We won't do this all the time, but I'm very curious on this because you kind of look at where they're at right now, and you look at all the bonuses, like these are all the positives. We have to go all the way down to get to the penalized parts, but as you can see, that's what it was. And looking at it from some of the results on AEW Dark and other matches where I looked at the dirt sheet on these, Daniels and Kazarian basically penalized for the declining physical ability. Also, it's worth noting here that the crowd was starting to get burnt out because we've had, so many type of, different style of matches that have appealed to the audience, but it is worth noting that it was penalized a bit for the crowd starting to get burned out. And this was a match that I'm pretty sure we did the high spots as the match focus. So that's worth noting too. But anyway, you look at it, I'll take a 76 for the main event match here between these two teams, and we may have to go back to this one at some point, given how well they work together. But the Young Bucks get the win in a main event match here, and just once again proving the awesomeness of the AEW Tag Team division. And that leads us to the main event angle, which this is actually going to wind up being a two-segment angle, and the first one is Jon Moxley pretty much just cutting a promo. He did last week. He hyped it up and said that he was going to basically cut a promo and make it clear that he's ready for his next challenger for the AEW title, and that's what he did here. Masterful. We're not scripting Moxley on any of the notes that we do when we book these segments, where he's just, he's like Jericho. We're not going to script him. He's going to pretty much improvise the whole thing. And so he gets a good one here, 89 rating. That's our highest rating of the show, I think. I can't remember what Jericho's was, but they were close. But clearly the red here, as we talk about, is just about the commentary because, the team of Jim Ross, Excalibur, Tony Schiavone, they just don't have the experience yet in terms of being together, so they don't have that high of an experience rating. So that's why we get the knock here. And when you have, such a great promo, when you get those promos anyways in the high, numbers, your announce team's going to get knocked unless you just have the perfect announce team there. So Moxley's in the ring cutting his promo, and that leads us to a 74 here for this one. And this is the final segment. And this is pretty much exactly what it says here. Finding this angle and decided to use it because it kind of fits what we want to do, where he's standing in the ring and he gets ready to go backstage. He feels like someone's watching him. He turns around. He doesn't see anyone, and he keeps on walking, but yet we see the camera kind of cut out into a shadowy figure that has been watching Moxley this entire time. And while I don't agree that the shadowy figure is going to run off, we can cut that part out. Just view it as though the shadowy figure did not run off, and we end the show with basically just that shadowy figure trying to clearly prove that he's been watching Moxley this entire time, and we'll see when he decides to show up to challenge the AEW champ. So not exactly what we wanted in terms of that final segment getting a 74 here, but I really just wanted to try this angle to see how it did, and clearly, if we would have swapped them, we'd have got the better rating. But anyway, you look at it, it's okay. We'll take this as one that I'm just curious to see what this would get with Moxley in this by himself, and of course he goes back-to-back segments here for this one. So 74 for the final angle, and we clearly have someone that is having his eye on Jon Moxley here, and what could be quite a challenge depending on who this person is, and that is your teaser and your hype as we head into next week's show on Dynamite. So we finish up the show. We get a 73 overall rating. I don't remember what we had a week ago. I think we had a 72, so a 73, that improves this one. As you can see, the live event experience level, the production values, we're still appearing worse because it's worse than one of the rivals, which WWE and NXT have both up their levels in terms of where they're at on that. So basically, they just keep upping them. And, at some point, I don't know exactly how far we're going to up them, but that's where they're at. So we still get a little bit knocked for this here, but this at least did increase our popularity in 30 regions, so that helps out quite a bit in terms of where we're at with the show. So at least we make an improvement on last week's show from a 72 to a 73, and now we will go look at the results for AEW Dark. And as you can see, we start off here, AEW Dynamite. Great feedback, a lot of praise for our show, 4,067 fans, and let's look at Dark real quick. We got a 48 for Dark, not as good as the previous episode, but it was one of those episodes where you just kind of throw some things together and hope that it sticks. And we started off with Big Swole beating the Bunny on the pre-show. Butcher and the Blade followed that up with a win over Michael Nakazawa and Brandon Cutler. We had another Darby Allin promo on that one. Kip Sabian defeated Colt Cabana. Sean Spears promo, again, that's that rematch we talked about with Sean Spears taking on QT Marshall. Another win for Sean Spears. Orange Cassidy delivered a promo, and so did Sammy again. He's working on his promos. And then Sammy gets the win in the main event against Scorpio Sky. So a 48 for AEW Dark, and we will continue to try to build up some talent on that show. We look at our competition, NXT. We did a 73 rating, as we talked about. NXT does a 62, and let's see what they put on here in their main event. Finn Balor gets another win, which he had to win in the previous main event last week, from what I can remember. And so, another nice show for NXT, although we have the higher ratings now, but they are, probably at least in a better spot in terms of their production values and all that type of stuff. But at least we are having better shows from a rating standpoint, and that's where things are at right now, 2 weeks into our competition with NXT. We wrap up here with a look at our mail. We will catch up on some of this, and let's look at all this different mail that we have here, because there is a lot going on, and some of these I've kept just so we can discuss them quickly throughout the week, and this is kind of how I'll do it probably. We look at it here to start off with. We mentioned during the show, NXT has now increased their production values to industry leader, so that is twice they've done that in previous weeks, I think. So they've done it in back-to-back weeks that they're increasing their production values, so that's not great, but what do we expect from WWE? We look at our AEW Dynamite. Viewing figures, we get a 1.28 TV rating, 963,078 viewers. I think that's up from a week ago. We'll look at those maybe in a second, but that's a nice one. We're going to just delete these as we go along here. So AEW gets a 1.28 rating. Let's see what Brandon Cutler thinks. Look at that. Brandon Cutler says, Sammy Guevara is money, strap a rocket to the kid. Well, Brandon Cutler, that is what we're going to try to do. Is make Sammy into a star. So at least that's good to know that people agree with Sammy Guevara being a future star here. We look at the AEW Dark figures, 5,620 viewers. Okay. Braun Strowman, he is available now to work in a new game area. Let's see where Braun is going now. USA, Canada, Mexico. I assume that Braun, probably Japan, may be the one that is his new game area. If we assume that he was already in USA, Canada, and Mexico, maybe it's Mexico. I don't know, but I think we're probably going to assume that it's Japan. So maybe Braun is thinking about going to New Japan Pro Wrestling after he leaves WWE, if he does. We had a house show held, which was a couple days ago on Monday. We got 661 fans at that. Joey Janela has relocated. He is going to reside in the Great Lakes. Nyla Rose, she was hired by AEW on a handshake deal, and we're going to work on that in terms of what Nyla Rose's contract is. We're not too worried about that right now, but of course we have a lot of handshake agreements and exclusive handshake agreements and that kind of stuff right now, so we're going to restructure some of those as we go through the game here and kind of see where everyone is at. Will Ospreay is now residing in Japan, so no surprise there, as that is where he is working with NJPW. DDP announced that he was going to retire. That happened last weekend before our show on Dynamite. So DDP is going to retire from the wrestling business and rake in a lot more cash with DDP Yoga. So that's worth noting. B. Priestley has chosen to relocate and now resides in New England. Okay. Another relocation and house show, another one there. So a couple of house shows, bringing in some money. And we'll finish with this one. I kept this one here because we tried this last week, which was getting Ricky Steamboat in as a road agent. But Ricky Steamboat has decided he does not want anything to do with us and that he wants to retire in peace. So no Ricky Steamboat being added to the mix there as a road agent. So that is worth noting as well. However, we do have some signings that we will talk about in the next episode of the series, because we are going to be adding a couple of people from a backstage standpoint and from a refereeing standpoint that are going to join the AEW roster. And what I'm going to continue to do is, while we may be signing other people in the game, we may discuss some of the ones that have been signed if I want you to know about them. If not, I may just hold them for some surprises on the shows, which I think, you may have a different preference, and that's fine. But I just like to kind of look at it and maybe hold some of them as surprises, so it makes the shows a lot more intriguing. So, guys, thanks as always for watching here. I've really enjoyed. I know there are a lot more of these that are coming out with the game. The retail version officially out, and I really enjoy watching everyone's videos. And as I said, it's what inspired me to start doing some of these. And so this is our third episode. And so if you're just catching on for the first time, go back through, watch the first couple of ones. Hopefully they're getting better each time. And just be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the games that we have coming up here with this AEW series. And I am going to be starting another series here soon that we will have on the channel. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. It won't be AEW, it'll be another company, and look forward to doing that.